What's going on, everyone? I'm Travis Brown with the Eagle, alongside former Texas A&M guard Mark French for our weekly chat about the Texas A&M men's basketball team. Mark, what's going on, man?
Oh, how's it going, Travis? Happy Monday to you.
Hey, thanks, man. Again, killer backdrop there, the city of Dallas behind you. Hope all is going well up there.
And everything's good. It's a little chilly. I think this week it's supposed to get down into the teens or something. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, for sure,
But
for
yeah, I hope
sure.
everything's good in College Station as well.
It is stormy here on this Monday morning. So
Oh, is
let's
it?
get to A&M had a big game against Memphis this weekend, and pretty much their first or second quad one win, depending on where you put Colorado and how they've moved into the picture or not. But before we get into that, I want to start with another angle about Buzz Williams' program, since it is kind of early in the season. We've just started this recently, and that's boot camp. Buzz Williams puts together a kind of preseason training program. Tell me a little bit about boot camp, kind of what that entails, and how does that unify? What does that do for the team moving forward as you go through boot camp?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's obviously gotten a lot of run in the press over the last couple of years. Everybody kind of wants to know what it's about. And I think one of the rules about boot camp is, at least when you're a recent graduate or in current player, you're not supposed to talk about it, right? So that it kind of creates a mystique, right? I'll be honest, the dirty little secret is that individuals, which comes before boot camp and goes on through September and the first half of October, I think, at least it was my experience, that individuals are harder than boot camp. Some people would disagree, but I thought individuals was harder. That's the 6 weeks leading up to boot camp, where there's 3 or 4 guys in a group, and you're just doing all these crazy drills and running, and you get a lot of shin splints. Like, I know Nebo, my year, that's where he pulled his hamstring. For me, that's where I had shin splints. I'd never get hurt, and I had a real awful shin thing. It was like I don't even know if it was a minor fracture. I forgot what they said it was, but I actually missed the first 2 days of boot camp. That's my year. That first year of Buzz was my senior year, and so. But yeah, I mean, boot camp, the idea, right, is to create a cohesive unit and go through something really, really hard, so that by the end of the year, you'll have already gone through the hardest things possible before you get into the season. And so I think you've seen that work time and time again, whether that be last year. I think they ended up with 27 wins. My senior year, I thought, we were probably one of the top 30, 40 teams in the country. I thought we were, rising towards the end of the season and could have, maybe won a game in March. Thought last year's team, you saw the cohesion and just how together they were. And I think beyond any conditioning or, schematic basketball things, I think boot camp is about, just building that group togetherness. And then, so you'll wrap up boot camp, you'll have a big celebration, right? There'll be a big brunch. And then typically you get about 3 or 4 days off, and then you'll go to training camp. And that's where you finally get into basketball stuff. And so, Travis, one of the things that's interesting is that Buzz sacrifices, and it's something he's decided. A lot of teams are starting basketball practice when boot camp starts. And so something to keep in mind for fans out there is that typically A&M is 2 to 3 weeks behind on basketball stuff, because we are doing boot camp, and then training camp, is really the first time where basketball stuff gets introduced. That's where they'll go stay, off campus, and some, Christian summer camp. And I think we went to Rosebud, Texas, my year, but it's somewhere different each year, and stay in the barracks, go do 2 days. But that's like a week or 2 after everyone else has started basketball practice. And so I think that's why you have this delayed, sometimes Buzz's teams get off to a little bit of a slower start. One, because their legs are so run down from individuals in boot camp. But then 2, you're not really starting on the basketball stuff until a little bit later, a week or 2 later than other teams. And so it's not a good, maybe it's not a good thing or a bad thing. It just means that sometimes the start to the season will be a little bit slower. And then on the back half of the year, you're really going to reap the benefits. And I think it's a really good recipe to win in March.
There you go. Well, let's move into this season. What's been going on? Texas A&M played at Memphis. Crazy environment. Quad 1 competition. Lost a close one. First, you have a background with not only the city of Memphis but Penny Hardaway. What's your story there?
Yeah, so I grew up in Memphis. I was in Memphis until right before my senior year of high school when my family moved to Texas. So born and raised in Memphis, outside of Memphis, actually in a suburb called Collierville, close to Germantown. And so, actually, when I got into high school, throughout middle school and high school, Team Penny was the new AAU team that had kind of developed. I'd played with Mike Miller's team a little bit, but yeah, so I played with Penny one summer. I think it was my 16 and under year, and he actually coached us. He was the actual coach of our 16U team, and he had someone else coach the 17s. And so it was just really cool to get to, practice with him on a day-to-day basis and, just pick his brain. I mean, that's an NBA legend, right? And he's teaching you about the pick and roll, the intricacies of a pick and roll. You're like, man, how fortunate was I, right? And so, like I said, I have a whole lot of respect for Penny and how he treated me. And, I'm just thankful, that I got to cross paths and be around a lot of other great players. So that was cool. And obviously now he's at the U of M, so and doing really well. So I wish him nothing but the best.
Grew up going to Memphis games. What was that? How do you describe kind of that environment? Because Buzz talked about it a lot. And it was pretty evident when you were watching the game.
Yeah, no doubt. So Memphis is a basketball town. I know in Texas sometimes that seems weird to us. We think, oh, there's something other than football out there. But no, Memphis is a basketball town through and through. The Grizzlies and the Tigers. It's a really big deal. I mean, even going back to I think my dad was a student at the U of M in the 80s when they were making all those Final Four runs and stuff. And so very rich basketball history. I mean, they're playing in an NBA arena, darn near selling it out for college games, right? So that really puts into perspective just how intense that fan base can be. But it's a great basketball town. And, I grew up watching, I remember crying the night where, who was it? Mario Chalmers hit the game winner. Kansas beat Memphis in the title game. And anyways, D-Rose, CDR, I used to go to the Memphis basketball camps every summer for a couple weeks. And Coach Calipari's son, Brad Calipari and I grew up together. And so just a lot of good memories going to those games and even Grizzlies games. But the Tiger games are special and the city really gets behind them. And so it was kind of, worlds colliding, so to speak, on Saturday. But I wish A&M could have come out with the win.
For sure. So A&M did have the narrow loss that they're in. It couldn't quite complete the comeback effort. What was your overall takes from the game?
Yeah, I mean, missed opportunities. Golly, man. There's a couple bunny layups, actually maybe more than a couple, that if you just finish, that could have been very timely to, maybe take the 1 point lead and you get to 3, or you're down 3 and you get to 1, but instead they come down and then they extend it to 5. And one of my basketball philosophies is always talking about these 4 to 5 point swings within a game, right? It's the play where, we have a fast break one-on-one layup, we miss it, and then they get an outlet and they go get the dunk on the other end. That's a 4 point swing, right? And basketball, in my view, is just a lot of these mini 4 point swings. At least the game-changing plays happen in that sequence. And so we were on the wrong end of a few of those. Reality is we just got to finish around the basket, and we probably win the game. I thought we outplayed Memphis in a lot of ways, particularly in the second half. The first half, I thought they dictated a little bit, even after we had a hot start. But that was a very winnable game. And, Memphis, it looks like, what are they, 26th in the Kim Palm rankings right now? That'd have been a really solid win to go and get it come March. And so now you're kind of looking at it. What are we, 6-4? God, that'd have been a nice win to have. So, but they showed capability. They show they can play with, really good teams on the road. And so I think that'll bode well come conference time. But man, I wish we could have snagged that one.
Yeah, Memphis was one of the longest teams that they've played this year. I think one of their lineups they went with most of the time had three guys who were above 6'8" on the floor. How much of that, from your perspective, the missed layups was guys with length forcing them to change their shot angle while they were in the air, and how much of it was just bad fundamentals, bad focus, missing layups?
I think it's probably, it usually always is a combination of both, right? And yeah, I mean, Memphis's length is something to talk about. They obviously are very athletic. You know, Chandler Lawson, I think, played a lot the other night. I grew up with his older brothers, Diedrich and KJ. They played at Kansas, went to Hamilton High School, and I remember when he was like 4 years old, walking into our AAU gyms, and then they have Jonathan. It's Jonathan, and there's one other brother who played the other night as well. Chandler and Jonathan Lawson, and I was just like, man, I'm getting old. Goodness gracious, I remember when they were like 4. But yeah, no, they're athletic as heck, and they're long and lanky, but that's what you're going to see in the SEC. And so I think it was a good kind of foretaste of what's to come. But look, all this stuff is very fixable. We have a lot of talent too, you know, and we have a lot of athletes. And so I think, you know, as you kind of look at it, we're not far off from where we need to be. You know, we're not where we need to be, but the growth that needs to happen, it's not like it's some exponential gap, you know, and we got a lot of mature players. I thought Marble was excellent. I thought there were some times down the stretch. I think he got us that layup that put us up 1. And then I would have loved to see us go back to the well. I don't know if he had a touch or a shot attempt after we went up 1 with like 4 to go or something like that. And that just crushed me. I was watching it with a buddy, Connor Schwartz, on the couch. We were just kind of chopping up the game. I was like, all right, you got to go back to him. You got to go back to him. They cannot stop him. He is too big and too powerful. And I don't know if he got a touch. And so some of that's on the guard, some of that schematic stuff on the coaching side, and then some of that's just how the game went. But I think Marble is an emerging star for this group. I think he's almost establishing himself as our second best player, kind of like we talked about a week or so ago. And I want to continue to see that growth.
So you're Buzz Williams this week. You've just come off a game where you shot, I believe it was 43% at the rim. On the season, you're getting to the rim 50% of your chances, but you're shooting about 60%. At least that was the fact heading into the Memphis game. What are you doing this next couple of days and really heading into conference play to try to bolster that shot percentage on layups on what should be the quote unquote easy shots?
Yeah, I think you're cutting up film and just showing the guys, like, look, like sometimes when you think a guy's coming over to block a shot, he's not. And then, you know, whether that's popping your feet in the lane or getting to, you know, an array of finishes, it's really just comes down to focus. And so I think you can pound the guys on the court as much as you want, do this, do this, do this, but sometimes it's just showing them on film. Look, guys, like, we're right there. We just have to finish. And so what I would do, and I imagine they probably are doing, is I would cut up every single missed layup or every single missed shot within 5 to 10 feet, and I would just play that on a loop. And we'd just talk about it in the film room and go from there and just say, look, like, we're getting to the spots we want on the floor, right? A week or so ago, we talked about offensive identity, and sometimes we aren't sure what that is for Texas A&M, right? And I think to some extent we saw flashes of it on Saturday night, and I think we want to be an attacking team that, you know, crashes the offensive glass. And so we're going to do that. We got to finish around the glass. And so, yeah, I think it's just cutting up the tape and showing it to the guys.
So defensively, I think there a little bit of a stigma is that Buzz Williams has this homemade defense, his kind of baby of a defense that is somewhat matchup zone, even though I know he would probably bristle a little bit at calling it that. It gets shooters behind the 3-point line and tries to compact the paint. But to me, the biggest change there that caused the comeback was just simply going to a 1-2-2 zone. How much was just incorporating zone a part of y'all's game plan when you were playing, and how much do you think that impacted the game in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I love the concept, right? The reality is some of it starts on the offensive side of the floor. So in an ideal world, right, Travis, what Buzz I think would like to see is a great offensive possession of about 15 to 20 seconds that ends in a drive to the basket, getting downhill. Say Tyrese finishes a layup, right? What happens right after that? They would love to get into this 1-2-2 full court extended press. You're not pressing to force traps and turnovers. You're pressing to condense the game. So we want them to take up 10 seconds of clock, getting it to half court, and then now what happens? They only have 20 seconds to run offense. So a lot of times in college, it's not like pros where the ball just snaps, and they're into something. It'll take the offense 5 seconds to get together, everybody gets their spots, and let's run a little play. Now they're down to 15 seconds, right? And so I think it's about condensing not just the game, but one step further, maybe even condensing each possession. And then I think if we get it to where it's like, all right, we got to guard really hard for 15 seconds, I think they're phenomenal. And that's what they did last year. If you remember in the tournament or in the SEC tournament, a lot of Q's steals, if you go back and watch it, where that is that 1-2-2, and then they get one trap and then they change to man. So it's this zone full court press back to once it gets to a certain number of passes or a certain place on the floor, say the corner, then they go man and match up. And it's been really effective for Buzz for a long time. And I think there's a comfortability with it, and also think there's an effectiveness to it. And you saw some of that Saturday night.
I know you have a bunch of great numbers in front of you, and a lot of those point towards Wade Taylor and what he's been able to do so far.
Goodness gracious. Yeah, sophomore from Dallas. Wade's been phenomenal. This is Ken Palm, which is what a lot of the basketball nerds like to use. One of my best friends, he's the video coordinator at Mississippi State, Tex Elder. He was a GA for us at A&M, and he hooked it up with a little bit on some of these stats. And so, yeah, Wade is first in offensive rating in the conference for players that are used on 28% of possessions or more. That's an incredible number. I think 119 offensive rating, that just like screams at you, right? It's like, oh my gosh, this guy has to keep getting the ball. And then if you go for guys used on at least 24% of possessions, I mean, I'll give you some names that he's around, right? KJ Williams, LSU, Brandon Miller at Alabama. Of course, we saw his 36-point performance against, Gonzaga on Saturday. Oscar Schweboy, Tolu Smith at Mississippi State. He'll be a draft pick. Colin Castleton at Florida. Really good company. That is the reason I bring that up. Wade's playing phenomenal basketball right now, especially on the offensive end. And we got to keep running things through four. I really believe that good things happen. And so he's sitting at 15 points a game, 4 assists, 2 steals, 2 rebounds, 36% from 3, 47% from 2. Just if from maybe like a coaching standpoint, if we want to be elite, that assist number probably needs to get closer to 6 with as much as we use him. Now some of that's other guys making shots, right? But yeah, if Wade could get that assist number to 6, keep the points where it's at, and then be more efficient maybe from 2-point range, get that from like 48% to like say 55, 60 on floaters and layups. But man, what a player, right? And he really is the straw that stirs the drink. So we just need him to elevate the other guys around him, right, to come up to his level.
So with where Wade was last year, to me, a guy who had a lot of talent, sometimes a little bit out of control, but always played with that aggressiveness. He's seemingly has honed that a little bit. What have you seen from his game from year 1 to year 2 that has made him the player that you just mentioned?
Yeah, I think some of it is just he's not as frantic. I think he's more decisive. I think some of that, to be honest, Travis, just comes down with playing games. Like sometimes we critique a first-year guy or a second-year guy. It's like, why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? And some of it's just, you just got to go into the fire, be thrown into the fire and say, figure it out, especially as a point guard. And so I think Wade was able to, he got tons of reps last year, right? And so there's a comfortability that he has on the court and a confidence that comes with having been in those situations. And now we're reaping the benefits, of that freshman year where he got to play a ton. He's comfortable and he's settled in, and, the game has slowed down a little bit for him, which is great to see from a second-year guy. Typically, we talk about that as a third or fourth-year guy. Seeing the game slow down for a second-year guy is a really good telltale sign, and obviously we're seeing the results. He's first in offensive rating in a lot of these categories and averaging 15 points a game.
To that end, I think that it's pretty obvious if you listen to any of Buzz's press conferences or know anything about Buzz. Certainly, the game works in his mind as a math equation. How much does these stats, data back up and are used in what he's trying to teach when you're a player for him?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a massive part, right? You said it's a math equation. It truly is. I mean, you have this binder, right? Excuse me. You have this binder, right? And it's just chock full of stats and metrics we're trying to hit. Now, each team may be different, right? So there's a certain offensive rebounded percentage they're trying to hit. There's a certain, number of paint touches per offensive possession they're trying to hit. All these nerdy stats that even like Ken Palm and some of these others, they don't even track. Like the staff will have to track it themselves. And so that's a massive part just of the culture of the schematic philosophy on defense and offense of what they're trying to do. And so, yeah, like you'll go into a review in the film room after a game the next day, or if there's an off day, that 2 days following, and there'll just be stats everywhere. And then everybody will have the same sheets of paper, and we'll go through it, and he'll point out, we were fit, this is how many layups we missed, or this is what we did when we got to the paint. What was our field goal percentage? Things like that. And it really comes to life. And I think that's one area that the more evidence that is accumulated, he does an amazing job of sifting through it. And that's why I think once you get to conference play, his teams typically just you see this growth pattern, right? And they get really, really good because they figured out the math. And so, hats off to them. It's really high level stuff. It's NBA type stuff tailored to the college game, but it's really high level.
You have those numbers in front of you. How much of a college basketball stats nerd were you prior to being with Buzz, and how much of that is a little bit of an impact on being in his program?
No, I think a lot of it was just honestly that senior year, being around it and seeing it come to life. I think I would look at it. I think it's just the angle and the lens through which I look at some of this stuff now. You used to look at it, maybe when I was younger and more naive, and be like, okay, let's just look at the percentages and the points, and maybe look at where is this team ranked and what's our offensive efficiency. I understood all that, right? I was always a smart player, but I think it's almost like accounting, right? You're trying to, what's the story here? And I think it's reading the numbers so that they tell a story. And I think that's one thing I definitely learned. Is just what are the numbers telling? What story are the numbers telling? And it's really cool to see it all come to life, because it's not rocket science. You just got to know where to look, and it's pretty evident. So it's really cool.
Sure. So from the performance, I think a lot of people were going to look at this Memphis game to see kind of where A&M is as a little milestone. They didn't get the win, but from what you saw from A&M, where do you feel like this team is, especially with conference play just right around the corner?
They're a Boise State loss away from being exactly probably where they want to be, if that makes sense. Take that Boise State loss away, and they're probably right where, given, the team, Buzz's teams usually kind of take off back half of the year. If we're sitting at 7-3 right now, and then who we got coming up, Travis? We got Wofford, Northwestern State, and Prairie View. So if we're sitting at maybe, let's assume a couple wins, 10-3 heading into conference, we're feeling pretty good, because we know we typically close the year strong. I think the Boise State loss, just to reiterate what we talked about last week, that one really hurts. Even though they're ranked 49th in Ken Palm, so it's not like they were a bad team. But yeah, I think we'll be fine. Truly, Florida, LSU, Missouri, Carolina to open up conference play. They're going to need to get to about 10 and what do we play? 18? Is it 18 or 16 conference games?
18.
18. So yeah, I mean, you're going to have to be in that 11-7 range probably to be in the tournament, which is doable given the talent level. 12-6 would be great. 10-8, you're probably on that first 4 out type, first 4, first 8 out. But in terms of development, right, as a team, not looking ahead at the schedule, but pure development, where the team's at, I actually, I kind of like it. Here's an interesting stat. Over the last 5 games, here's the most frequent lineups. The number 1 most frequent lineup over the last 5 games: Wade Taylor, Tyrese Radford, Dexter Dennis, Henry Coleman, Julius Marble. That's 2 seniors, 2 juniors, and a sophomore who's one of the top offensive rated guys in the conference. I think you're going to see that lineup a lot. I think you're going to continue to see more and more of Marble. I think we need Henry to get back on track a little bit and be a force. And again, it's that how is Marble and Henry, how are they going to coexist and feed off of one another? We got to figure out that riddle. I thought Dexter played well Saturday night. Still want to feel his presence a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, I think we're taking steps. Manny played well. So I think there's enough talent there. We just got to figure out the riddle, right? And I really think Marble is the key to a lot of this. I think the chessboard falls into place when we know what we're getting from 4, Wade, and then we're going to know what we're going to get from Marble. And then let everyone else kind of fall into place, whether that be Boots, Manny, Dexter, Henry, etc. Solo. We got to continue to develop him. But, yeah, I think I'll tell you this, there's a whole lot worse places we could be. So, I'm optimistic. I really am.
So not sounding any alarm bells yet.
No alarm bells yet. The Boise State one, just maybe it was just because I was there and I didn't like the body language. That one kind of sounds some alarms. But then you go get the Oregon State win on national television, and then, you come back another national TV game and you almost beat, a top 25 team essentially on the road in a rowdy environment. Yeah, no alarm bells on my end right now.
One guy I want to ask you about is Andre Gordon, who I believe you played with your season. He's a guy that, as Henry Coleman has kind of struggled, and especially early in games, kind of getting into games, Andre Gordon has stepped up and taken on a starting position there. I know Buzz has called him an elite defender, one of their best defenders. What does Andre, especially with his experience, kind of bring to this team and that starting lineup in that role as the guy that you played with and know pretty well?
Yeah, no, I love Dre. I think it's just a guy that's been around for 4 years, man. And again, all this stuff is, it's great to have the young talent, but how many times do the one and done teams win the national title? Rarely, if ever, right? 2015 Duke, 2012 Kentucky. But besides that, it's all about the older teams. Those are the teams that make the runs. And so Dre's an integral part of that. He's been in our program for 4 years. How often does that happen nowadays, right? So I think, and just being a veteran voice and a guy that's willing to accept a role that maybe he isn't going to be the guy that's scoring, 12 to 15 a game, but he's still an integral part of what we do on a day-to-day basis. And that takes emotional maturity, that takes emotional intelligence. And I think that's what you're getting from Dre. He's also a really good athlete, like you mentioned, that can, defend probably 1 through 3 if you really had to. And but yeah, I think above anything else, it's a mature guy that's been in the program for 4 years, knows what's expected. He's played in these arenas, he's played in big games. I'd love to see him get more involved, he's shooting 35% from 3, right? I don't know how many attempts that is, but get a little bit more involved on offense. I think it'd be nice to have him as an extra shooter. But yeah, I think KK Robinson's getting some minutes there. Dre's at 14 minutes a game. So yeah, I mean, I think you're going to keep seeing him throughout the season. Buzz is going to lean on him. Whether you see that show up in the stat sheet in the form of points and assists and minutes, that's to be determined. But in terms of a guy that he trusts, I think Dre certainly is that guy.
So let's close out with this. Like you said, I believe there is 3 more games before conference play with Wofford, Northwestern State, and the last one was
Prairie View A&M.
Prairie View A&M. That's right. What would you like to see from this team in those 3 games that gives you more confidence as conference play kicks off?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I have a theory, and maybe this is not politically correct to say. I'd love to see some blowouts. I mean, I'll be honest, Travis. Like, I think a sign of a team that's really strong going into conferences, especially say like the 27th, 2 days after Christmas. Can we come in, buckle in the day after Christmas, get our work done, and come out and look, Wofford's 169 in Ken Palm, Northwestern State 281, Prairie View A&M 263. That's their ranking according to the nerdy experts, right? Let's not mess around. Let's have 20. Wofford, let's win by 15, and then Northwestern State, Prairie View A&M, let's win by 20 plus, and really get a rhythm going. And also within that rhythm, Travis, I'd love to see some guys like. I'd love to see Marble come have like a big 20, 25 point game. I'd love to see Manny continue to develop, and I'd love to see Solo really get going one of those games and have 15, 20 point type performance. I think those games are used as a springboard so that guys can mentally file away that, hey, I can do this, and build confidence. And so hopefully we don't come out and struggle against any of those teams. I'd love to see some blowouts and some guys put up some really good stats and gain confidence heading into that Florida game on the road on January 4th. So that's what I'd say.
There you go. Programming note for y'all watching. Since next week is the Christmas holiday, we'll go ahead and take a little break and be with some families. But we'll be back in the new year with Mark French to talk a little bit more about this A&M basketball team and get his insight, expertise on everything going on. Mark, man, again, I appreciate it this week and look forward to talk to you again here soon in the new year.
Great to see you, Travis. Looking forward to it.